Coming up next on Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable, proponents of Prop 127 take aim at Attorney General Mark Brnovich. And we will preview Monday's U.S. Senate debate being held right here on Arizona PBS. Those stories and more next on the Journalists Roundtable.
Arizona Horizon is made possible with the support of Arizona Highways Magazine, Escape, Explore, Experience, and by APS, working 24/7 to keep Arizona on, and by the contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Luigi Del Puerto of the Arizona Capital Times, Howie Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Mike Sunnix of the Business Journal. Supporters of Prop 127, including a certain California billionaire, are spending big money for new ads against Attorney General Mark Brnovich. What's that all about?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is a strange tactic for a ballot campaign to go after the Attorney General or any other politician and conclude that that is their best path to getting their ballot measure approved. Now, there's all sorts of theories as to why they're doing it. One theory is that they may be trying to find a way to save face by blaming Brnovich, the Attorney General, in case this ballot measure goes down. My personal take is probably they just have too much money and they want to spend it everywhere.
Well, it's too much. Oh, wait, I know. I have some ideas. Look, the fact is, Brnovich drew the sting on this thing. It is true that Arizona law says Secretary of State drafts ballot explanations and the Attorney General gets to review them and make adjustments. And the AG's office routinely does. But the language that they added to this, which has to do with the 50% renewables by 2030, said it would occur basically irrespective of cost to consumers. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I work with words. That's like waving a red flag in front of somebody. That's like going ahead and saying, look, we don't care about consumers. You could have said it could raise or lower costs. There were many other ways of saying it. And having, as the proponents of Prop 127 say, put his thumb on the scale on the thing, they figured, okay, we have an ad says vote yes on 127, vote no on Brnovich.
So we got a lot of money now coming in, not maybe so much as thought against, as Luigi said, Prop 127 seems to be in a world of hurt here. But is the Attorney General? I mean, is he?
Well, this guy Steyer is throwing money, like Luigi said. He's everywhere. He put a bunch of money into the impeach Trump movement. He's put a bunch of late money into a bunch of congressional races throughout the country, all for Democrats. So there's a partisan part to this. This guy's in the D camp. I don't know if that's enough money. What is it, 3.7 million, something like that?
3.6, yeah.
Yeah, is that enough money to really tip the scale? Now they're hoping that APS is unpopular enough to kind of maybe move this race. And look, it's the power company. They've spread a lot of their own money around, and they've taken some political hits on that. If that's enough to move the table? But one thing I think they are trying to do is gin up some new interest in their own initiative. It is struggling because you got a big no campaign out there. APS basically put 11.8 million in there, and so I think this maybe flips the script a little bit and says, hey, the fix is in. The folks down at the state capitol, all Republicans, are against us, and maybe the voters glom onto that.
Well, they have a good reason to be upset with the Attorney General because, as Howard pointed out, the Attorney General added language that even the state elections director, in the emails that we have seen, Eric Spencer, said that's eyebrow raising because it had nothing to do. It didn't. That language wasn't from the ballot, the text of the ballot itself. So yeah, they have a reason to be upset with the Attorney General. Now, of course, it's really tough to say what kind of a blue wave, to what extent we'll see a blue wave in this state. What we know is that Mark Brnovich is up in the polls, and that's consistently happened. He's up in the polls. Maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they're polling showing that they could make a play and make a difference in this particular race.
And I want to get to the Attorney General's race in a second here, but let's Attorney General says, what's the problem here? This is fact. Something else is fact. Well, the Republican Attorney General's Association donated to Brnovich's campaign 4 years ago. They've donated to his campaign this go-around as well.
But more to the point,
APS and Pinnacle West have donated to the Republican Attorney General's Association.
Are you suggesting laundering?
I'm asking.
Look, you can certainly draw some lines there. Look, APS is not giving to the Republican Governors Association, as they've done, and the Republican Attorney General's Association, because they want to elect a new governor and attorney general in Kentucky. They have their own issues here. You know, people spend money because they want something. You know, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. You may elect people because they support your issues, or you want to elect somebody because of the fact that you think they'll vote your way. You know, there's clearly a connection there. APS thinks they're getting money. They've got another $3 million in other accounts that they're going to be spending on legislative races, and we'll get to see the financial disclosure next week. The issue, interesting enough, with Steyer is, in terms of bang for the buck, he would have been much better off spending more money to elect the 2 Democrats who are running for the Corporation Commission. Sandra
Isn't he spending money on those
He's
races?
only spending $250,000 combined. If you put $3.6 million into defeating Justin Olson and Rodney Glassman, you could probably move the needle on that. You put 2 Democrats on the Corporation Commission, along with Bob Burns, you've got a working majority there.
Brnovich says that he must be doing something right if the California billionaire is focusing that much money against him. Sure,
yeah, he talked about the debate. He plays that up because to the Republican side, this guy's an anti-Trump guy, and he's spending money everywhere. He's a big sugar daddy trying to put Democrats in the House and other races. So to get the Republican base out, and that's the GOP strategy, is to turn those Trump voters out. You know, you want to play that up. And to Howie's point about the ballot measure, we've seen this on the right where they've tried to use Arizona as this test case, you know, to get policies through, either at the legislature or at the ballot on immigration, on abortion. And, you know, maybe that's what their goal is here on solar. If they can get it through Arizona, initiative process, look, we could try to do these things in other places. On its face, you know, you talk to a lot of people, initially they support it. You start getting in the nitty gritty, you start having a big power company spend a lot of money against you, and you see the support erode.
Luigi, you were going down the path of the Attorney General's race. Let's talk about this right now. The increased ads, will this make any difference? We had the debate this week. Will this make any, will January Contreras get any traction out of all this?
Oh, well, traction, I'm not sure, but will it sway some people? It will sway some people. The thing about Arizona is that Republicans here have a 160,000 voter registration edge. Historically, the Republicans perform with 12 points in the past several election cycles in advantage, in performance. That's the number of Republicans that show up compared to Democrats. It's a wide gap. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm in the Democratic Party. Like I mentioned before, they're maybe, and just maybe, we don't know for sure, maybe they're seeing something we are not seeing. Maybe the gaps are closing. And you've seen Garrett Archer from the Secretary of State's office. He said this week that the gap between Republicans and Democrats now down to 3.8 points, which is, you know, last time it happened in 2009.
But we're still down to what the other half of the problem, which is Republicans are higher efficacy voters. You know, you go out, you register a lot of folks. If you're registering a lot of teens who haven't voted before, that's
Are they higher efficacy voters in the land and the world of Trump?
I think even that. I think there are a lot of folks, you know, whether you want to consider the Sun City and the leisure world folks, who had to be high efficacy voters, particularly in the age of early ballots. Doesn't require them to go out and do anything. You know, you don't put a stamp on the envelope. You get your envelope, and the fact is that they tend to be higher efficacy. Is anything going to change because of Trump, because of Kavanaugh? Who knows?
Yeah. But let's talk about the debate here. And again, January Contreras is trying to focus on the fact that Mark Brnovich, as Attorney General, is focused on all these cases regarding constitutional federal issues and these ideological things around the country, not necessarily in Arizona. And those resources should be put to Arizona interests. Again, as I asked Luigi, does that have any traction to it?
I don't think it does for most people. I mean, look, the fact is challenging the Affordable Care Act, that has some Arizona connection. Issues of the university and tuition, that's definitely an Arizona connection. Now, he has gone off the deep end on a few things. I mean, interceding in a case between Americans for Prosperity, which is a Koch-funded group, and the state of California about disclosure, financial disclosure. The state had no role in that. That's purely ideological.
And there's an ExxonMobil case that he got involved with as well that was just, again, solely on constitutional and federal issues. Again, ideological. No doubt Koch brothers and that crowd saw things a certain way. He saw it the same way. Why is the Democratic candidate for Attorney General not taking this and running?
I think the DACA case the immigration cases is where maybe she can get some traction in energizing Hispanic voters, energizing the Democratic base, and getting them out. Look, if she wins, we'll have a blue tidal wave. I mean, if she wins this race, this is a type of race that if that goes her way, or if it's really tight, it's going to go really well for a lot of other Dems. But yeah, I mean, attorney generals across the country do this. Both parties, they'll join in together with their cohorts. Sometimes it's bipartisan if it's a consumer protection type thing, but a lot of times it's a partisan thing that the New York, California, Connecticut all join together, and the red state ones will join together like on Obama.
But here's the other thing that people forget in terms of why part of the reason Contreras can't get any traction. Brnovich, for all of the things we did talk about, also has tended to take on issues alone. Volkswagen is the only state that went after Volkswagen separate from the other states. Other consumer fraud issues, even going after right now looks like Google in terms of privacy. These are good issues, and he's been very good on those issues.
And they're not just good issues; they're good issues for senior citizens. The very voting demographic that would turn out and vote in a primary election like in a November midterm election like we have this year. But the debate that we saw here, it was very clear that there's a divide between Brnovich, whose slogan, whose motto, if you will, is that, look, it's the law of the land. I am forced to either defend it or go after somebody because I have to do it. And you have Janet Contreras sort of saying, well, I may be a little bit more selective in the things that I defend or I go after. I mean, that was very clear in the debate. And that kind of optics, I think, plays to Brnovich's strengths because he's saying, look, if you elect me or re-elect me, I'm not going to think twice about which laws I'm going to defend or not. I'm not going to be selective. I'm not going to put my moral judgment on statutes. I'm just going to have to do what this office is supposed to do.
Well, except now we're back to the dark money. Did he put his moral judgment on that? Yeah, he decided that there's a right of anonymous speech, and as far as he's concerned, money is speech. That's a moral judgment.
Treasurer's race, we had a debate on that one as well. That one got a little personal, a little testy, and right quick. Is this Kimberly Yee's race to lose?
Yes, essentially. Again, part of it is the Republican edge here. Mark Manoyle is not exactly, high profile. I mean, he ran, I guess, for Corporation Commission a few years ago. The problem he's got, as you point out, is he had some personal financial problems, have a car repossessed. If you're running to be the treasurer over a $15 billion account, that's not exactly what you want. Now, his point is, well, I've learned. I suffered through it. A lot of people suffered in the recession, to which Kimberly Yee responded, yeah, other people weathered the recession without having a car repossessed.
Well, and not only that, but it just seems like the treasurer's race almost traditionally is favored toward a Republican.
Yeah, they have the advantage, voter registration, turnout, and obviously a midterm. She made an issue of his legal practice where he was a tax lien attorney, and Republic had a pretty good story a couple of years ago about the impact of tax liens, and these are consumer stories, and some poor soul gets their house taken from them by some greedy investor.
She said he stole people's property.
Yeah, and that resonates. Plus, she's a rising star in the Republican Party. If you hadn't noticed, the Republican Party's got a lot of old dudes, if you see the Senate Judiciary Committee, and so they need diversity. They need a big tent. They need women, and she checks those boxes, and she's somebody that I think that they'll stand out a little bit on the ballot for people.
And I've always said, watch Kimberly Yee, because this is a politician who is very disciplined, who knows how to avoid scandals and controversies, who is very dogged in her pursuit of what I think is ultimately her ambition, is to go even higher than the treasurer's office. I think that's plain to everybody. But yes, it is her race to lose. And we haven't had a Democrat in the treasurer's office, I think, in half a century or something like that. So it goes back to, this is a low-key race. It's down the ballot. And is this the year where Democrats truly turned out and make things happen? And if this is the year that does it, is Kimberly Yee then a casualty of it? But right now, what we've seen in the polling so far is that she's ahead, and there's no reason to think that's going to change anytime soon.
And real quickly, in the debate, Howie, Mark Manoyle pushed something along a socialized, Yee called it socialized banking, but it's more of a public-private partnership in terms of getting banks and bank services out to rural areas. Yeah. Sounded interesting. Yee had nothing of it.
Well, no. I mean, it's nice to call it socialized, but what he says he's envisioning is, look, I was editor of the Bisbee Review. Sometimes getting financial institutions to recognize there is life in Bisbee is hard. And to the extent that he says, look, we'll use our money to help be in the bank, that will allow them to lend more, the entrepreneurs will be able to invest more, and it's not a bad idea. And the fact is, Republicans in the past have suggested such use of the treasurer's funds.
It's not a bad idea, but what can the treasurer do to make it happen?
Well, what the treasurer can do is there is a certain amount of latitude. I mean, yes, the lodestar is maximum return, maximum safe return,
right,
without junk bonds.
Right.
But there's a certain amount of flexibility in there in terms of, could you invest in mortgages? And I'm not talking mortgage-backed securities, but could you invest in banks to allow them to lend money at a reasonable rate of return?
Yes, but and then Yee responds, that's all fine and dandy, that sounds great. Give me the best ROI, and that's all my job is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where people are at with that position. They don't know a lot about that position. Our current governor was in that position, so it's a bit of a stepping stone. Look, he's got an enthusiasm gap even among Democrats. The Democrats are getting excited about women candidates across the country and progressives. The Texas Senate race, the race in Florida, progressives. You have women doing very well. If there's a wave, you might see it more in the Attorney General's race because you have a woman, a Latina,
or the corporation,
or the corporation
Secretary of State,
or
Secretary of State, or superintendent
versus this.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Garcia is kind of facing this too. I think Democratic voters are more jazzed about voting for women, and maybe folks that are Republican moderates, independents that are annoyed with Trump, maybe upset about Kavanaugh, maybe they turn out for women and not men.
Well, we're kind of jazzed about the U.S. Senate debate, Luigi. It's coming up Monday. It's a big deal.
I can't wait.
Me neither. I can't wait to do that one. It's going to be right here to Arizona PBS, partnering with the Arizona Republic. Kyrsten Sinema, Martha McSally. Who has the most to gain? Who has the most to lose?
That's a really tough question, because all the polling that we have seen, if you aggregate them, Kyrsten Sinema is leading. And if you're leading, you don't necessarily want to debate. Kyrsten Sinema said, let's go debate. Let's go ahead and do it. But Martha McSally, we have two very strong, independent women. You can't pin them down as acolytes of either party because they have shown their independence. And I think you're going to have a really good debate.
Yeah, you can. I think one of the first things I'm going to be curious about is, who are these people? Are they the far left and the far right that we've seen? Are they the more centrist that we're seeing now? Who are these people?
Well, that's part of it, that while they've both been in Congress, I think for a lot of folks they are unknowns. I think at this point, Sinema is the one who's going to be on the defensive. We're going to see a steady dribble of old videotapes of Kyrsten saying things from her teenage and 20s and 30s that is going to put her on the defensive. I would bet that out of the hour you've got to have them debate, I'd bet 15 minutes of that is going to be her defending herself. That's going to be her job. Now Martha's problem is Martha is not always temperate in her comments. She had a little thing the other day with Doug Ducey, and she lit into the press of, why aren't you taking this seriously? And if she doesn't maintain her particular demeanor, she can come off looking very bad.
And that's the thing. We're going to try and let folks not only hear what they have to say, but see how they respond. Who these people, again, who they are under certain situations, because this is the only live debate. These folks have been very, very careful. This is a high-profile race. I mean, everyone around the country is watching.
Yeah, this could decide the Senate. I mean, and I think you're starting to see Republicans especially realize that. And maybe the momentum they have from Kavanaugh is starting to think they might have a chance here, because it seemed like for a long time Sinema was being pretty careful, not as fiery as some of the other Democrats here in the state or across the country, kind of laying low, maybe trying to run out the clock. And you've seen McSally, maybe gain a little bit. There was an ABC 15 poll. People have had some questions about it, but she's ahead in that one where she's behind in the other ones. I think for McSally, it's how far Trump does she go? Is Trump supposed to come in? Does she hitch her wagon 100% to him? Hope that that's going to carry her with turnout, or does that turn off those people in the middle?
I think we've already seen Martha McSally sort of very deliberately move toward the center, and she embraced Trump during the primary. She had to do it because she had very conservative challengers, but there was a poll that was done by that was commissioned by Kevin DeMena's group, for example, that showed that in their poll, it's the people in Maricopa County who are under 40 years old. They're the ones who are going to decide what happens to statewide offices, and if effectively the millennials and the sort of the younger Gen X. I mean, those are the urbanites. Those are the people they have to sway, and that's a small pool of voters.
Are they swaying that small pool of voters with the relentless? Every time I open the mailbox or look at what's in the mail, it's a placard saying that the one candidate or the other is the devil incarnate. I mean, are those things the television? You can't watch a sporting event now without seeing these commercials.
Well, and that comes down to how many people are locked in anyway, which gets back to a certain extent Luigi's point. Look, there are probably 40% on each side that are locked in. Doesn't matter if for cinema supporters, if they found her dancing with Saddam Hussein, it wouldn't matter. But it's that 20% in between that they each hope to sway. Well, here's a picture of Kirsten anti-war. Well, here's McSally lying about the Affordable Care Act. This is one of those things right down to the wire.
I think it's turnout. I mean, I think especially for Republicans. If McSally's waiting for millennials to come through, that she might be waiting a long, long time. I think for the Republicans, they're looking at what happened with Kavanaugh. They see these rallies with Trump. It's Trump's party. That's why Jeff Flake isn't running, and so they got to turn them out. I think that's their hope. I think it's a tough go. If they don't get a turnout advantage, Sinema's got the advantage.
So the thing about negative ads is if you ask all the pollsters and the strategists and consultants, is negative ads, they work. And they consistently work because for some reason we just want to listen to negative stories. But the thing about negative ads, they also say, is that they work to suppress your opponent's votes. They don't necessarily work to draw more supporters to your side. There are cases when, as you're dragging your opponent down, you also get dragged down by your strategy. So both sides know this one. Their consultants know this one. So the challenge for Martha McSally, even as she's going after Kirsten Sinema, it would be to also prop her name up among the independents. How is it 20%? A lot of folks think it's 11, 12% undecided voters. All
right, well, again, that's Monday, and we will be promoting the heck out of that one before we get to Monday. But before we go, Howie, and we have a few minutes left here, Carolyn Warner died at the age of 88, and we had her on the show in May because her autobiography, ghost-written, but autobiography, came out earlier this year. She was in fine form on our show, so this was a little bit surprising. Who was Carolyn Warner?
Carolyn Warner was born Oklahoman, came to the state with her husband, Ron. They had a furniture store up on Osborne. She got involved in education very early on, Phoenix Union High School Board, was convinced to run for state school superintendent in 1974 and managed to get elected, served 3 terms there. Had some other ideas in the middle. In 1976, she tried to run for the U.S. Senate. Dennis DeConcini defeated her in the primary. That was the last time we had a Democrat as a U.S. Senator. She's mostly known more recently for her 1986 run for governor. She was probably a shoo-in. You have to remember the Republican Party was badly split. Burton Barr was supposedly the choice of the business community. He was the majority leader. And this little upstart named Ev Meekum, who had a Pontiac dealership in Glendale and was somewhere off to the far right of the party, managed to defeat him. Okay, Carolyn's figuring, hey, this is going to be a shoo-in. All of a sudden, some of the folks in the business community who weren't quite sure where Carolyn stood decided, hey, we got this guy Bill Schultz, who ran against Barry Goldwater in '80. Schultz re-registers as an independent and spent $2.2 million, which in 1986 was a hell of a lot of money, and got just enough votes, somewhere in the 25-30% range, to make this a plurality. And Ev Meekum, with somewhere near 40%, walks in as governor. And the rest, as they say, is history.
And when you hear about Evan Meekum as governor, you always hear that everyone was surprised that he won. But when you look back but at the time, it was surprising only because Evan Meekum had run for governor, had run for all sorts of things so many times, and he lost so many times. And he was considered just a guy who constantly gets on the ballot. He beats Burton Barr. That got people's attention. You still didn't think he was going to be governor. I remember election night. People were going, What the heck happened?
Yeah, he had little infrastructure, and he ran a lot after he was already,
He did. Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. That was kind of a bit of a crossroads politically.
I think so.
For the state, and kind of maybe set some images of the state in stone. One thing about her is she still went to a lot of events. You see her at a lot of events, and she was always interested in whoever she talked to, whether it was a student or a regular person or a journalist. She gave you their attention, and this is a time when a lot of politicians do a lot of name tag looking, and if you're important enough or if you pay enough to meet with them, they'll sit down with you. And she was not like that. She was a very personal, very, very, very in-your-face, friendly type of person.
And here's the other thing that's most telling about this. 4 years ago, she endorsed David Garcia when he was running for school superintendent. As you know, he lost to Diane Douglas. Diane said, of all the former superintendents, Carolyn Warner was the nicest to her.
Yeah.
That says a lot about Carolyn Warner.
You'd have to search long and hard for folks that have something really negative to say about Carolyn Warner. All right, died this week at the age of 88. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Monday on Arizona Horizon, join Arizona PBS and the Arizona Republic as we host the only live broadcast debate for U.S. Senate. Hear from Martha McSally and Kirsten Sinema Monday, special time, 6 p.m., right here on Arizona PBS. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible with the support of Arizona Highways Magazine for people inspired to enjoy Arizona's unique outdoor experience, and by APS, working 24/7 to keep Arizona on. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
Like you, we get up and go to work every day. We're on the job, keeping you connected at home, at work, and to what matters most. Others count on you, so you can count on us. We're here restoring power quickly when storms hit, even fixing issues before they happen. We're making solar more reliable, investing in battery storage, and constantly updating the grid. We're here working 24/7, keeping Arizona on.
When you cast your vote in the upcoming election, you connect with issues that hit close to home. Clean Elections provides voter resources and tools so you can vote informed on August 28th. Connect with the facts at azcleanelections.gov.
Explore new ideas and new worlds here on Arizona PBS, a community service of Arizona State University.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon.
And I'm Maria Paletta, state politics and government reporter with the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com.
This Monday at 6, Arizona PBS and the Arizona Republic will host the only live debate between Congresswoman Martha McSally and Kirsten Sinema as they vie for a seat in the U.S. Senate. So join us Monday at 6, only on Arizona PBS.
This week on Arizona Horizon, join Ted Simons for in-depth discussions on these topics and more. It's all this week. Watch Arizona Horizon, weeknights at 5:30 and 10 on Arizona PBS. Coming up next on Arizona PBS, Life and World. Watch sneak previews of what's coming soon. Go to azpbs.org/previews today. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
Support